Get ready to tune in, turn back the dial, and rediscover the airwaves of yesteryear. This is Echoes from the Past, your backstage pass to the shows that changed everything.
Bob Hope. What a name, right? You don't even have to be a comedy aficionado to recognize it. It's one of those names that stands the test of time. But why? Why does Bob Hope remain such an enduring figure in comedy, even decades after his heyday? Well, let's talk about it. So, Hope wasn't just funny. He was sharp, quick, and even kind of daring for his time. His humor had this knack for being universally appealing, which, honestly, that's no small feat. Whether it was one-liners that hit you out of nowhere or his playful jabs at his co-stars, he always managed to toe the fine line between humor and charm. You couldn't help but admire how effortless he made it all look. And then there was his legendary cast. I mean, we're talking about some of the biggest names sharing the stage with him. People like Bing Crosby and Jerry Colonna. These were folks who didn't just play along with Bob. They elevated the comedy alongside him. Their chemistry was, I guess you could say, electric. It's no wonder audiences tuned in religiously every week to hear what they'd get up to next. Now, on a personal note, when I was starting out in media, back when I was still kind of finding my voice, I stumbled across some Bob Hope recordings. Mostly by accident, actually. They were tucked away in an old collection of radio shows my dad had lying around. And let me tell you, those tapes, they changed the way I looked at comedy. I remember thinking, this guy makes it so conversational, so natural. It reminded me that humor isn't just about writing. It's about timing, tone, and how you connect with your audience. It was inspiring, to say the least. And Bob, well, he had this way of creating a moment that made everyone feel like they were in on the joke, like they were part of something exclusive. That's kind of rare, you know? Now, if there's one thing Bob Hope is probably best remembered for, and trust me, the list is long, it's his USO Christmas shows. These weren't just performances. They were lifelines for troops stationed far from home during some of the toughest times in history. Whether it was WV, Korea, or Vietnam, Hope was there, cracking jokes and lifting spirits. Picture this. It's December, and you're somewhere in the South Pacific. The war's raging, morale's probably pretty low, and out of nowhere, here comes Bob Hope, surrounded by a crew of entertainers, setting up a makeshift stage in the middle of nowhere. It's not just comedy. It's a reminder of home, of normalcy, which, honestly, must have felt priceless for those soldiers. And his lineups? They were incredible. Hope didn't just bring his wit. He brought stars like Francis Langford and Jerry Colonna along for the ride. The musicians, the dancers, it was a full production, right there on the front lines. One soldier in an interview years later described those shows as, and I'm quoting here, a brief escape, a moment where you forgot you were living through hell. That says a lot, doesn't it? Listeners who grew up during that era, or even their kids, often talk about how nostalgic those shows feel now. They say Hope's humor feels like a time capsule, carrying this sense of warmth and resilience that's hard to put into words. I read one review where someone called him America's voice of hope, which, I mean, seems fitting, doesn't it? And it wasn't just the troops who loved him. Back home, they'd broadcast these performances on the radio, and families would tune in together. It was as if, for a moment, everyone, no matter where they were, was part of the same big audience, laughing at the same punchline. That connection, that shared experience, is something we don't see often anymore. So, let's talk about this milestone, the 65th birthday celebration episode for Bob Hope. Honestly, it's hard to imagine any performer reaching that kind of longevity, much less being at the top of their game for so long. For context, this particular show wasn't just another episode. It felt like a tribute to the man's legacy. As you listened, you could tell it was crafted with so much intention, almost like a love letter to both Bob and his audience. What stood out to me the most were the heartfelt moments scattered throughout. Sure, there were the laughs. Bob never skimped on that. But there was also this sense of gratitude, you know? It was as if every guest, every word spoken, carried this underlying message. We're here because Bob Hope brought us together. And you, as a listener, couldn't help but feel like you were part of that celebration. It was inclusive, in the best way possible. And let's not forget, the ratings for that episode? They were through the roof. It's fascinating because this wasn't during some heyday of radio. It was already deep into the television era by then. And yet, people still tuned in, eager to hear the magic of Bob Hope on the airwaves. What does that tell us about his appeal, right? I think it says that humor like his, genuine, smart, timeless humor, never goes out of style. It's like comfort food for the soul or something. Now, bringing this back to JellyPod and other digital platforms, it's incredible how they're keeping shows like these alive. I think about how niche content used to be lost to time, how once something fell out of the public's immediate interest, it kind of just disappeared. But now we've found ways to preserve these gems for future generations, to make them just as accessible as they were when they first aired. And that's no small feat, especially for something as, culturally significant as Bob Hope's work. And on that note, that's all for today, folks. Thank you for joining me on this little stroll through comedy history. I hope you'll take some time to revisit, or maybe even discover, Bob Hope's genius for yourself. Until next time, take care and keep laughing. As Bob himself might have said, don't take life too seriously. You'll never get out alive.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through the airwaves of the past. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the classic radio shows that shaped generations and left a lasting legacy. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode of Echoes from the Past. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to share it with fellow fans of history, storytelling, and vintage radio magic. Until next time, keep your dial set to the golden era and let the echoes of the past remind us of the timeless power of radio.